Welcome to Leadership Pulse podcast. I am Jay Sharma, your host. On this podcast, we invite various tech leaders and discuss topics which are relevant to you. Today, we have with us Casey Dai. Today, we will be talking about career stagnation, future-proofing your skills, and discovering your competitive edge. Casey, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Thanks for the intro, Jay. Like Jay said, I'm the founder of Expanded Skills. Have a lot of other ventures going on, which I always live by the motto, chaos is the only consistent thing. The main thing we help people with at Expanded Skills is how to navigate uncertainty by future-proofing your skills and eventually finding your competitive edge that's durable for the long term. So what we do is we take a look at your skill sets, find where your strengths are, and then add to that skill set to make sure it's a defensible and robust skill set across time. So you're not constantly having to chase trends and worrying about things changing and being irrelevant the next day. So that's a one-liner pitch. If people want to follow what I'm doing, I also run another business with my wife locally, doing some angel investing, some crypto bets here and there. The best way is to follow my newsletter. I have a Substack, so it's just my name, caseydai.substack.com. And yeah, let's get going.
Great, Casey, and thank you for joining us on the show. So my first question to you is, could you share a little bit about your journey and how have you helped individuals face career stagnation?
I'll give a 30 to 60 second version of my career path, which will help contextualize things. And then we can get into that part about how that fits into the picture of helping other people develop their career and overcome like stagnation. So I came from a non-traditional background. So started on the finance side of things. Before that, my parents were all like very entrepreneurial. We ran like several small businesses in Toronto. Moved from finance and then took a dip into tech and never really looked back after that. So my first experience in finance taught me that there's a lot of things that can be modeled using tech. So I got into decision sciences, AI, and data science at the time. Landed at Accenture, worked on a lot of client projects, and then made my first pivot into leadership at Manulife. So a local insurance company here in Toronto, one of our former clients as well. And then took the reins as the leadership. So I pivoted over to Manulife, which was my foray into data engineering and also my first leadership position. So built a team, scaled it from 5 or so when I arrived to about 30 plus when I left over a span of 2.5 years. Shipped a lot of models into production, which checked a lot of boxes I wanted to take off at the time. Then I went back to consulting since I really liked my career trajectory and growth there into practice lead position at Capgemini, leading data engineering analytics in Canada for financial services clients. So that shifted from a more internal role where the work came to you to more go-to-market where you need to take into account how the demand is looking like, but also bring the right offers to market so you can generate demand. Then left all of that to pursue talent development full-time now with Expanded Skills. So as you can see, I've navigated several inflection points and critical pivots in my career. And the only constant, like I said, is chaos. So if I were to really hone in on one thing, it's like helping people navigate a lot of uncertainty, de-risk their careers, take a long view of things. And it actually coincides well with a lot of my hobbies since I was in like the poker space for quite a long time, right from like when it was like booming back in when TV poker went first live. So that statistical thinking, probability thinking, and be able to stomach downturns is something core to my DNA.
Wow, such a interesting and inspiring journey you have.
Yeah, lots of twists and turns.
Yeah, and I think I loved the aspect that you mentioned, the long-term thinking, and we'll come to that in a moment. But for audience, would you define what does career stagnation mean?
Oh man, it's a heavy topic, which is why we have the hour to unpack it. So maybe let me start with laying the groundwork here, which is a paradox we have to unpack. So as we know in any innovative frontier, which is generally the tech industry, or if you move over to the blockchain space or anything like that, there's abundance of opportunity, right? But if I got $1 for every time I heard someone is stuck working in those exact domains, I would probably retire by now. So there's some like imbalance or some paradox to unpack there, right? Because the opportunity seems abundant from a 30,000 foot view, but when you hear the stories from the individual level, a lot of people are stuck. So I call this like the reality simplified version, which is not true. And then I'll take a more pragmatic view of how career progression actually works. So the reality oversimplified is you go into an org, you get high impact scope right away. You work hard and maybe possibly smart, You over deliver and then you maybe get rewarded and then you rinse and repeat. Only if it was that linear and circular, everyone just needs to like follow those 4 exact steps and no one would be stuck ever, especially when the opportunities are abundant and the problems are left unsolved every day in those spaces. But a more pragmatic view is there's a lot of factors outside of your control. For example, like where you live and your geography matters at the end of the day. It ties into so many things, not just compensation band, access to employers. It's really the DNA of the market that you're in. For example, if you work in tech, if you have proximity to the Bay Area, it's going to rub off on you here and there, right? You'll hear about things come across colleagues and so forth. So your geography matters, and it's not that easy to switch on your own. The other thing is brand and prestige is an accelerator and lubricant for like everything to get things done easier, right? For better or for worse. The third thing is it's probably the most hard to stomach, which is hard work alone is not enough, but it is still required, which is an interesting tension to unpack, which probably deserves its own episode. The final thing I'll just like touch on, and then we can get into like the various scenarios I've seen of why people get stuck and then how to like unstick yourself, right? Last thing, I benefited from this a lot in my career, and I'm the first to admit it, is a few critical conversations and a few critical relationships at the right time can just accelerate. It could just fast forward it 5-7 years overnight if those factors come together as a perfect storm. But you have to put yourself in a position to get lucky. And we can unpack that a little bit later as well.
Yes, we'll definitely talk about it. But before we go there, in your career, did you experience stagnation yourself? How did you land on that this is the area where you want to go?
I'm a very impatient person. So I think like I felt like I was stagnating every day, that it's not like a hockey stick curve growth. So you usually get this hockey stick curve growth when you're into a new role, and then it lasts like a honeymoon phase of 6 months. And then after that, it'll like really peter out and plateau. Even though if it's like linear growth, for me, like I always feel like I'm stagnating, which is why I spend a lot of time thinking about this topic and making it more like a reproducible formula. It's like, what scenarios are there really that are the most common? And then like, what is the formula to unstick each of these scenarios? And they're all drastically different, and some of them paradoxical and conflicting as well.
Yeah. So, a lot of our audiences, I've heard from many of them, they always talk about, hey, I've been working in this job. I have 15 years of experience. I've achieved this level, but I can't go forward. And now I'm feeling stuck. I have this feeling that ageism is real in our industry. And then if I don't go higher in the corporate ladder, I would not be relevant in the industry. So what would you tell these people?
Oh, yeah. This is fresh off memory because I think less than 3 weeks ago, I came across an interaction with a person with almost a very similar question. He felt like he wasn't growing. He's 12 years in, still not managing people. And then when we the first thing is like unpacking that. It's clearly the individual's feeling really bad, right, about something. But it's like, where is that feel bad really originating from? Is it you're disappointing yourself, or is it like the external market telling you that you're of this tenure, you should be managing people right now, but like maybe he just wants to be a really bad SIC, right? Like who is the market to tell that person he needs to manage people to get to the next level, right? So if it's external facing expectations of you and it's not internally driven, that's like the first obstacle to remove, because you really shouldn't care what the external validation is if it's not congruent with your goals to begin with. If he was an IC and he's missing certain technical skills to deliver, then it's like, and he's not putting in the hours to get those skills, then that's like something to fix. That's on him, right?
Yeah. I think just a quick clarification. You mentioned the term SIP. Do you mean senior individual contributors? Just make sure.
Oh, yeah. Senior IC. Yeah. Individual contributor.
Okay. Yeah. So, you talked about two different things. One is about, externally driven motivation to get promoted or managing people or going to the next level. And second is the lack of hard skills, like if you are not up to the mark on technologies. I think latter is more black and white, I would say. I've seen, and I think that's easier to conquer. So let's drill into the first part of the problem. How do you deal with external expectations that society has of you as a professional, as a person?
I'll give a one-liner on the latter part, and then we can come back to the external. Because the first part, like you said, I totally agree that when you acknowledge that problem and you kind of have the discipline and focus and you truly want to solve it, it is a very solvable problem. But the problem usually happens before that. because a lot of times we have trouble accepting that we have a gap. So I'll just kind of leave it there. And there's probably a layer of like ego and acknowledgement to unpeel. But then once you recognize that's a gap, it's relatively easy to solve. So onto external expectations of you. I think a lot of times it comes down to you follow what is societal's definition of success when you're not clear internally of what you actually want.
I think that reminds me of a conversation I had this week, with one of the professionals. And this person came to me with like, hey, I've been working in the industry for 14, 15 years. My compensation has been increasing. I'm an engineering manager right now, but I think I'm stuck because I'm not going to the director level. And if I don't go to the director level in a couple of years, I will be redundant because people will say, hey, what do you bring to the table? It's a very relative conversation. And I think what we also discussed was let's separate out the definition of success from what it actually means versus what a society has made us believe.
I think, to make any progress on that conversation, I have to address the elephant in the room here, which is as long as we're measuring our individual career progress in relation to a corporate ladder, you're bound to fail. So let me unpack that a little bit more. Because I gave a couple talks last month on this exact topic about the 4 actual career levels that matter and how that's decoupled from a corporate model. So if we think about the origins of a corporate ladder, what is it really designed for, right? If we put our first principles thinking hat, it's designed as an incentive structure to organize efforts within the org so it's pointed towards achieving purposes that the company wants, right? It's actually not designed and fit for purpose for like personalized growth, which is highly individual, highly like preference driven. So if we peg ourselves to tiers on a corporate ladder, then that's like setting a premise on a model that like wasn't designed with individual career progression in mind. Keep in mind, there's nothing wrong with the corporate model inherently. It's just the level of awareness of what the corporate model is designed to do and what you're trying to do and the tensions between them. So it's very much needed, the corporate model, in a sense, because the company needs to organize its talent pool and it needs to keep people focused and incentivized and progressing. However, but if we peg our entire worth on like which rung of the ladder we are, and especially when we like hold others accountable to saying it's 5 years, why aren't you up like this level, right? Why aren't you up like 2 levels on this rung? Oh, you're stagnating at this level. It's like shaming them and guilting them off of a model that wasn't designed to measure individual progress to begin with. So it's like a separate kind of thing, which I will release a long form blog on. I'll just commit in the next week. It's queued up, ready to go. So there's that. We have to like get away from that premise first. I only think there's 4 levels that matter. There's an individual contributor level, which you're measured on your individual throughput, and you just need to get good with your hands to produce high quality work consistently and with speed in that order, which is actually one of the scenarios to get unstuck, assuming you're staying in the IC band. But if you go from IC to manager, you have to work on a different class of problems. You can't just pump out more code as a more efficient and faster IC. Even if you have a team of 3, how you maximize team level throughput is almost never with your 2 hands. It's really something even beyond any individual level. It's usually at the process level, or even if you're playing the advanced game, at the incentive, standards, and policy level. Then that bridges into the manager of managers where things get like really, really abstract because you're essentially assigning frameworks and ways to think about problems so the managers can go fill those frameworks in and then actually prescribe the solution instead of prescribing the solution yourself. And then at the CTO level, or whoever's the highest of your function, it's a really, really weird tension. Because 1, you're not really spending a lot of time in the engineering org. Your job is mostly cross-functional. Your boss is the CEO and the board of directors. But all the hairiest, nastiest engineering problems get escalated up to you, or else it would have been solved at the lower levels. Plus, you have no person to escalate to or no peer to sound it off because there's by definition only 1 CTO per company. So I think those are the only 4 levels that matter, and you just become better problem solvers on those 4 distinct set of problems. I think that's what people should care.
That's a very, very beautiful way of, kind of classifying how to think about careers. I think I would also add to this that, when you start comparing yourself with other people in other organizations, each organization is different. Like a director in organization A doesn't mean they will be a director in organization B because organization is different, their scale is different, their size is different. The other thing, I would just add this anecdote that I recently saw. I'm sure you've read this book, Psychology of Money. I know we're talking on tech, but money is somewhat related.
Oh yeah, love Morgan Housel.
Morgan Housel, right? So I was watching one of his podcast on the show called his Diary of a CEO. And the way he defined success was something that resonated very deeply with me. Like he said, success to him means getting freedom to do what he wants to do, when he wants to do it, to who he wants to do it. Right. So he could very well mean I could read a book on Wednesday afternoon, and then after lunch, I can go on a walk with my wife. And that's success to me, not being a CEO and not being able to control what I really want to do. So, I just wanted to give a plug that success is very, very personal. It doesn't mean if the other person is getting promoted and you are a level below than him, you are not successful.
Yeah, I think it should be purely internally driven. I think that's the theme we go back to. I remember I had a conversation with very impressive CTO earlier last year. And his background is just insane. So he was former Olympic rower, silver medalist, or like podium on the Canadian national team, has a law degree on the side that he doesn't really use, is like fractional CTO for like 5 companies in parallel. Clearly a very dialed in individual. Now he does technical due diligence at a VC fund, source like the deals and make sure they have an alpha for whatever they invest in. So I asked him, it's like, how do you stay so driven? And he just gave me a simple answer. He's like, I actually never compare benchmarks to other people with similar titles or whatever, but he's insanely competitive with himself. And he just compares with himself yesterday, an hour ago. And it's just always in a competition with himself. And it's just version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4. And wow, did that land and resonate with me?
Yeah, this is awesome, And as they say, comparison is a killer of joy. So don't compare yourself with anybody.
Absolutely. You're comparing their outsides with your insides. That's the other thing. And I don't think it's actually helpful to look at results at all. I'm actually obsessed about process, because if you just look at a result and you can't observe their process or even like have any chance of replicating that process or to refine your own, it's useless.
Yeah.
It's just a number. It's like they're making this much, they're this title, but you have no observation of their process to get there. Then at the end, it's just an empty vanity metric that makes you feel bad.
Yeah. Let's, you defined your total career in kind of 4 stages: individual contributor, manager, managers of manager, and sort of the head of engineering, CTO, or whatever you have. So I want to focus mostly on the first and the second buckets, because like a lot of people are actually stuck there. Like individual contributors trying to take the leap to become a manager, or managers trying to take a leap to become managers. So what advice would you give a IC who is trying to become a manager and is kind of stuck right now, not getting around? Like, what should they do?
So I laid out 5 scenarios where people commonly get stuck, and they're ubiquitous actually across the 4 levels. So we just like unpack that. And then there's like one of the scenarios, I think scenario 4, which you'll get to, which is specifically for making the leap between the levels. So like IC to manager, or like any transition beyond that. So the first one is, I think like a lot of people have unrealistic expectations. So the TLDR is like having your cake and eating it too here. So what that actually looks like is it's very easy to do anything if you keep doing it poorly. So it's like, yes, I'm doing engineering, my code works, but it's like, okay, is that the standard you hold yourself to? It comes from an internal belief or like value system, which drives like what you pay attention to every day. So my litmus test, people I coach, is when they wake up, are they thinking more about the rewards, or are they thinking more about the problem-solving process in order to get the rewards? So I've met countless people that they know the compensation bands for big tech on levels.fyi to the T, but they cannot tell me what the top 3 to 5 pain points are in data engineering or whatever their area is. Huge disconnect. You're not even conscious of like what the key issues are and what people care about and what's a headache in your area. You should not be spending any time looking at salary bands on level.fyi. Yeah. So that's typical like asynchronous kind of like disconnected behavior, right? Like your expectation versus reality. Another common example, I think, especially with this market right now, because there's a lot of like job seekers and everything, they always say it's like, well, I don't have a network, so how do I get referrals? Well, my response to that is, well, you had a job, like how much networking did you actually do? Are you good at relationship building? Have you practiced how to reach out to somebody, right? And ask them for their time? Or is this like the first time you're doing this and you're under stress and you have a need when you reach out to them? So you didn't like dig the well like 6 months ahead of time, right? It's like dig the well when you're thirsty. That never works. So it's not a surprise that it's like networking feels awkward and cringe and like all that because you haven't practiced. So that's another thing. It's like just an audit of like, where are you spending your energy. That's scenario one.
Yeah, I think this is a lot of great insights in terms of why people get stuck. So I would request you to.
Yeah. Okay. Scenario two, I think we talked a little bit about this. I call it you've yet to maximize your existing opportunities. So it's like now you know your domain, assuming you know the top 3 to 5 issues and you're actively thinking about them. So you check the box for scenario one. Now scenario two is literally a boring formula. You just have to get up and grind. So no shortcut to this. So there's 3 parameters. I think we touched on this earlier. You tackle this in sequence. So you look at quality first, consistency second, and speed third. So a lot of people just emphasize and harp on speed and consistency. But I think that is just a waste of time, because if you don't know what quality looks like first, it's like doing infinite reps at the gym with that form. You're just going to throw your back. So it's like do one quality rep where you're not going to have to see your chiropractor after. And then talk about like showing up consistently to do the rep. And then like talk about like how many reps did you do. But it's usually like flipped around. It's like, hey, you just need to pump weights, right? It's the same thing. You just need to write infinitely crap code.
Ego lifting, right?
Yeah, it's like you need to have a reference point for like what good looks like in the first place. And a lot of junior engineers, like they have trouble with this. I asked them, well, if your boss is like not happy with the work, is there a clear benchmark for what quality code looks like or quality output looks like, right? And this is transcendent across like every level. It's like, what does a quality output look like for that level? If it's not there, then I strive them, and it's like, then you be the best in class example and get other people to refer to your work for what good looks like. So you set the standard, right? So quality, consistency, speed. Once you've taken care of that, the third thing is just volume. Like you got to be patient. So like we mentioned, a lot of factors out of your control at the beginning. There's a lot of variance. Anyone who tells you, and this is like common in the tech creator community, like a lot of people saying, oh, I'll help you like accelerate your promotion process. You can hack the promotion process. I just call like BS to that, because you're trying to hack a social system at the end of the day. Like you need enough shots on goal. Like you're going to get unlucky sometimes, but if you're good and you shoot enough times on goal, you're going to hit. So I think it like actually skews the expectation that you can like speed run your career in like 2 years or like a year or whatever, right? That's not true, like, because you don't know what's actually going on behind the scenes. But my formula is like, if you check scenario one, scenario two, then like you need to put enough shots on goal before you're saying like I'm capped and I'm actually stagnate. Because I always go back to the line, like thinking about from my poker days and like thinking in expected value terms. Like the best plan also has some chance of failure, and the worst plan has some chance of success. So if you're on the right side of the distribution, then you still need to take enough shots on goal, right? Because we forget like statistics 101. Like we know that anything under a sample of 30 is not statistically significant. So you can actually transcend that concept into your own career. So a lot of these complaining, it's like, I didn't get promoted this cycle. You know, that's really like one shot on goal, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I think like if we unpack this a little bit, why a lot of high performers, they tend to be seen as job hoppers. But I think like if we take a more objective lens to this, let's say like you have only one shot on goal at a promotion at your current workplace. Let's say it's like 30% because they know you well. Even if you have like 5% chances or 10% chances at each external workplace, you have it levered to farm infinite amount of opportunities externally. So I'd rather take 5 shots of 10% than 1 shot of 30%, right? And it's not mutually exclusive either, right? So it's like higher probability that those 10% shots are going to land. So I just like, don't knock the individual. Like that's just how the system works.
No, actually, on that note, I want to give a plug. I read a book very recently. The book is called as Thinking in Bets.
Oh, I love it. Andy,
exactly talks.
Yes.
And it talks exactly about this thing. It's not a right or wrong decision. It's just you're taking a bet and sometimes you get unlucky.
Oh man, this is the perfect segue to scenario 4 actually. Because we take another page from Annie Duke's arsenal, it's kill criteria, right? Which is their third book, Quit. Okay, so scenario 4 is you've mastered that class of problems. You're like a really good senior individual contributor. Now you want to make manage, but you can't be like a higher quality, like more consistent and faster engineer and hope to get. So how the promotion process works, more and more for big tech, it's a conservative promotion policy. Meaning it's actually counteracting the Peter principle, which they don't want is like to promote someone into a role and then they don't know how to operate at that role, right? So what they need to see for anywhere between a 6 to 18 month horizon before they promote you up to the role is like you're already solving problems at the next level. So if we go back to the 4 stages framework, then we know an IC problem and a management problem is different, right? And a management problem and a manager is different and so on. Then you can't be working on the same class of problems. You have to go find scope. That's a different class of problems. Like you're not pumping out code, but you're like fixing the SDLC. So you're always like abstracting it up. And then if your managers, it's like you tell your manager, it's like, these are usually where the SDLC goes wrong or where there's friction. Go investigate, right? It's a different class of problems. So you just need to like actually know that you need a different class of problems and you need proof of work to counteract the conservative promotion policy that most companies have now. So a lot of ICs, they're just like, I'm a really good coder. Let me code harder. Let me take like one more Udemy course. No, not really.
Yeah. I think that there's a perfect plug there also, right? Especially from going from IC to manager, you require more than just good coding skills. You need to be a good team player. You need to have excellent communication skills. You need to have excellent ownership as well as, sort of leadership qualities. And I think there's also a famous saying that says, what got you here is not going to take you there.
It won't get you there.
Yeah. Right? So that's a perfect thing to remember. When you go from a IC to a manager, you have to unlearn a lot of stuff and learn a lot of new things.
Yeah. The unlearning, like to make room for the new learning to come in. And
Exactly.
Let's keep flowing on this. Then only after you check those 4 scenarios, which are all inward looking, you have to evaluate whether your environment is actually compatible with your goals. There's a reason I put this last, and in the order actually it is in, because if you actually check the boxes for the first 4 scenarios, you probably would have seen a lot of improvement. And scenario 5 is like, well, after you've actually exhausted the first 4 scenarios, there's probably like something incompatible at that point, right? Like, if you want to work on a certain type of problem and you feel like it's needed for your personal growth, not just what the company requires you to do to get to the next rung, and you've checked all 4 of those boxes because you do inward reflection first, then you have to consider like, do I tolerate it? Is it a good trade-off? What other opportunities are available to me? Do I switch? And like, how flexible is it really, right? Like, how much can you change things where you are? You have to take like a very objective lens to do this. So I was like, there's like a tier list for this as well. But on the extreme end of the tier list where like you cannot change it ever is if the work that they're requiring you to do, you don't like, but it's inherent to their business model. That cannot be changed because that goes back to the purpose of why the org exists and everything, right? Beyond just like the P&L and all that. But if it's just like, like it's just one interaction I have that I don't like so much, or it's like, I just need a different team, I could just like lateral across, then you have something you can evaluate, right? It's like, what is the trade-off to like asking for a switch internally versus like just getting a job somewhere else? It can be like also autonomy based and stuff like, which is why some people like go contracting, right? Make their own hours. They don't want to be paid for like a fixed amount, but that's how salary employees work. So that's why a lot of ICs, and it's a lot of viable path for a lot of people, is they go the solo contractor route. So you're only capped by like how much you can do and the clients that you can find.
Yeah. Cool. So I think that's a lot of information to unpack for the audience. Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about how do you find your competitive edge?
This is heavily personalized, but I always start with, do you have the foundational skills in place, or like, are you aware of the foundational skills? The entire premise of expanded skills is built on a couple pillar skills. The first pillar is related to meta learning, accelerated learning, right? In that bucket. So if we do a skills tier list, again, it's very hard to find a better skill than learning how to learn, right? Because it's essentially an accelerator for you to pick up any other skill like on like lower than that on the pyramid. The second foundation I check is, can this person solve critical thinking? And critical thinking is like very loaded word, which if you even do a quick Google search, it unpacks into a lot of stuff like problem solving and so forth. And they're all like really, really juicy skills. So it's like critical thinking is like the tree trunk, and then the branches are also like very powerful skills. Then like a third, I would say, is like around the relationship building, but it falls under the umbrella of how do you become more influential. Influential is just like how you navigate interactions and relationships and what your reputation and brand is on the market. But I'll put that like at a distant third versus like the first two. So it's like really accelerated learning, number one. A very close second is critical thinking. and then it's growing your influence. Then we talk about like more tangible skills. If we unpack, let's say, growing your influence, then it's like, can you productize your knowledge? That's usually something I check for. So it's like, how much do you have trapped up here, and how much of that can you get out into the world that other people can consume? So that's why I'm really into the content creation stuff, because it's just like practicing productizing your knowledge every day. Like this podcast we're having, it's one way of like productizing the knowledge, right? Because if you and I didn't have this conversation not recorded, then like it'll just be stuck up here and then nobody else knows, right? Yeah. So that's what we do essentially. It's like, okay, do you have the foundations? And then once you have the foundations, are you applying them to kind of the right problems that you have an interest in solving? So then we take them to step 2, which is you're looking for a 3-way intersection. So picture like a Venn diagram, right? So you're looking for 3 things that overlap. The first 2 are like inward. So it's like, what are you actually good at right now? So you don't want to like build skills that you don't have any like synergies with, right? Or the second thing is like, are you intrinsically motivated and interested in this thing? So that's like the Venn diagram that overlaps. It's called like passion. And then, but then you need the third one to bring it to life, which is like, how much market demand is there for this? So this is actually the first thing to job searching in a tough economy, which is like, before you go blasting like 10,000 CVs into cold apps and just getting like rejected by the ATS over and over again, it's like, find your candidate market. So that intersection between the 3 diagrams is actually candidate market. So it's like, what are you good at? What do you have an interest in growing? Because interest is directly tied to how hard you'll work on it. And then it's like, what does the market really demand? So it actually goes back to scenario 1 of getting unstuck in your career. It's like, are you aware of the top 3 to 5 problems in your domain? Which is a gut check to see how well they understand the market.
I think that's beautifully put. If I were to summarize it for our audience, the first step is to actually look inwards and understand how passionate you are. First of all, do you really buy into what you're doing? Do you understand it with depth? Do you understand what the core challenges are? Do you know how to solve them? And overall, let's say it's a combination of passion and hard work in an area which is marketable. Like if you have passion and put a lot of hard work in something that you can't market, you're probably in the wrong place. You need to change your profession.
Yeah. And the harsh reality is there are just inherently certain things that are more marketable than others.
Yes.
Right. If you're in business, it's like, yeah, it's the industries too. There's certain verticals that are just like more conducive to making money, if that's your goal. And just other verticals that are just like tougher to operate. Right. Because like, that's why everyone always beats up on airlines industry. It's like that for skills too. Like it's like industry. Yeah, there're just certain things that are just easier to market.
That's true. But one thing I'll also give another plug here. My personal belief is you can make money in any profession provided you are in top 10% of that profession. Like do whatever you do really, really good, better than 90% of the people, and you'll make money. Right? Yeah, you might not make money as fast as some other professions, but you will make money. You don't have to choose a wrong profession just to make money, because then it will be fundamentally disconnected with your beliefs and you'll get stuck.
Yeah, it's a distribution, I think, for every industry. Yeah, like you said, that tail end of like the top 10%. Yeah, it's usually like good sweet spot. Yeah, there are like extremes to this too. Like one extreme where like you have to be in like the top 1% or 0.1 is like music or sports, right? And then like another one where like you can actually be like mediocre, like very middle of the pack and make money is like accounting. It's like ubiquitous, boring like thing, right? Like I can say this because I came from a finance background. Yeah. But yeah, there's a distribution curve for like each of the things. And a lot of markets too, it's some of them have winner take all dynamics, which is why like the only like top 0.1% make a killing. Like music is a winner take all market. Sports is a winner take all market. Accounting is not. Tech is like pretty sweet because, it's top quartile. I think like you do pretty well for yourself. Yeah.
Cool. Let's shift gears once again. What advice would you give people who are at onset of their careers, like they're just starting, like what should they focus on? How can they prevent getting stuck later in their life?
When you're starting out, having good reference points and role models, this comes down to that, which is like it's trite wisdom to say like, oh, you're the average of the 5 people you associate with most, or like you need to go find a good mentor, all that. But if we look at the reality of like, let's say called finding a mentor, on a good day, it's like a crapshoot. There's no guarantee that you'll like land with the 5 circle and you have a brain trust and they'll carry you for the rest of your career. like if we break down the process of how most people go find a mentor, and there's nothing wrong with this because it's just like inertia. There's like family, friends, who you go to school with, and then like what your workplace offers. And that's about it, right? If you're lucky, you meet somebody at a networking event or a conference, but it's not like intentionally searching. So the shopping process to find like good mentors is completely broken and like a random walk, right? Which is why I actually inherently believe like the coaching market has a lot to offer, even though it's like one of the most crowded things that anybody can label themselves to be a coach. That's like essentially, instead of like just rolling the dice and hoping you meet the right person, if you do find the right person, then it's like they're paid to help you, right? So you go into it, it's like, yeah, like buying groceries. Like if you can only get your food randomly through like a mystery box every day, it's very low likelihood you'll eat healthy, right? But if you can go into the store and like actually pick out the produce yourself, and that store's sole purpose is to sell you food, then it's just like a win-win, right? So that's something I wish I understood earlier, rather than like, this just seems like the most competent person in my workplace, so let me just like model my behavior off him or her until like I find somebody better. So it's like that random champion challenger model is like what I went through for a long time. So there's that. Yeah, I'd say like that's probably the one thing, because it can change how you think and your trajectory. The other stuff is, I think it's like, they know it, they have to show up, do the work. Only you'll look out for your own career, right? So you got to drive your own career growth. It's stuff like that. Our early career is actually very challenging to coach, I'll be honest, because they're still coming in like really fresh, right? They have a lot to discover, and it's very, very hard to actually help them discover what they need to discover on a 60, 90-minute call. A lot of it's like unpacking what they already have and maybe discovering things they had that they didn't know, right? Which is why like it comes into play like for more experienced people, and like why they're like usually like the coaching market's like focused around there, not for better or for worse. It's just the reality of things. But I was trying to go out of my way, like at least every month, like coach someone that I normally doesn't fall into like my target audience. Yeah. Just to kind of reach out, get perspective. And I think it's just like a healthy thing, because I think also like, and you can give your 2 cents on this, I think that the coaching market's like very misunderstood as well. And people have no idea how to shop for a coach.
Exactly.
It feels like buying a computer is like on one end of the spectrum, shopping for a coach is like on the other end of the spectrum, right? Like buying computer is like, oh, let me compare like the RAM and the specs. Getting a coach is like, I don't know. It seems like a good company. His content seems good, right?
I think you are touching a very interesting and a sensitive topic, right? First of all, I think for whatever reason, our society has normalized not having a coach when it comes to your corporate careers.
Yes.
Right? If you're a sportsman, you wouldn't go onto the field without a coach. Right? If you're a musician, you won't go on a recording studio without a coach. If you are a student, you won't go to the classroom without your coach. You know, everything we have a coach, but when it comes to corporate careers, we are very happy to do things on our own and struggle and fail and, you know, make mistakes. So I think that's fundamentally flawed, right? Somehow that got normalized, and people have made to believe that if you go seek a coach, that means you are not doing well, which is, I think, is foundationally wrong.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
Yeah. I always draw the parallel, like you said, to athletics.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous not to have a coach.
Yes. And the second thing I would say on this is, very rarely I've seen one coach take you through your entire career, because you as a human, your priorities will change. You know, what you like will change. Like, for example, you started in finance and now you are a content creator and an entrepreneur, right? If you stuck with a finance coach, you wouldn't be where you are, right? So as you grow, as your desires, as your passions, as your interests change, you have to find new coaches, right? The idea is to find somebody who can accelerate your learnings. I always say accelerate learnings, not accelerate promotions. You can learn from the mistakes they have made. You can take lessons from their paths, their journeys, and find a path that is more efficient.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the hunger.
Exactly.
Yeah, like the hunger to get an edge, because it's highly competitive and the stakes are high, and we know like there's a lot of stuff at stake, right? It's just like how athletics is very competitive and there's a lot of money at stake, right? And everyone's just trying to look for that extra 1% edge, which is like that competitive edge that we're trying to search for. But for career, it seems like a lot more hand wavy and like relaxed. But sometimes it's just like equal amount of money.
I think it's even more in some cases. Like athletic careers are very short. Like our careers are 40 years long. Right?
Yeah.
So even if you make modest income, compound it over 40 years, you have large sums of money at stake.
Yep.
Right? So the one last thing I would add is you talked about it's hard to coach people early in their career. Yes, it's very hard for you and I because we did that thing a long time ago. At the very early stages of your career, you need more of a trainer than a coach. Like example, like when you start going to the gym for the first time, you need a trainer who tells you how to do things.
Yep, exactly.
Right? How to get started, how to get better at something that is required of you. Here are your 20 deliverables. This is how you deliver them and excel at that. And then you come to a career coach stage where you know the foundation, and now you need to understand how do you maneuver the journey.
Actually, we'll like take half of that back where there's still value early career, but not in the form that like typically people think about coaching in, right? I actually just thought of a few examples of early career people in the past few months that approached me where there's like a high amount of value. It's really to like organize their L&D plan, like learning and development plan.
Yep.
Right. That has high value because like you can just take a look at like what are you consuming right now? Like what trainings are you like taking? How much time and attention are you putting towards this in relation to your goals?
Yeah.
Then like in an hour, you can actually make a huge impact to reorient their learning plan. And then they go off to execute. It just doesn't make sense to spend like a ridiculous long amount of time because a lot of times it's just you need to do the work early on. And a lot of it is in isolation before you kind of show up and play, right? There's the L&D like backlog optimization, call it, right? That's a huge force multiplier. Oh, the other part is if they're thinking about taking a very expensive like advanced degree and they just think it's like the only option, right? Or they go in and it's like, I just don't know what I'm going to do after with this degree, but it's just like the thing to do or like something to hold on to.
I think you're referring to the MBAs, right?
Culture. So I've talked.
I think you're referring to the MBAs, right?
Oh, the MBAs is the most notorious one because you're looking $200K plus 2 years plus opportunity cost. So there's like basically $500K down the drain, depending on like what that exactly look like.
Exactly.
But even advanced degrees like master's degrees, $50K, the opportunity cost of not working, that's always huge. So if you can make like a 10% better decision on a 1 hour call with someone when you have a $50K like decision in front of you, then you should like take it always because expected value wise, that call is worth $5,000 to you, right? If I'm only thinking in poker terms, right? Always like you're facing a bet of $50K in front of you. And then you're like trying to decide like whether you put your chips in or not. So if you get like 10% better information of like what they could be holding, then like you would pay for that information because that information is worth $5,000. That's just like how I think about it.
I think absolutely. And there's a parallel to it, not even the master's degree in United States, at least, you go for a bachelor's, you pay $100, $150K for a 4-year degree. Yeah. But when it comes to a $15,000, $20,000 investment in a coach for a year for you, and people are like, oh my God, that's too expensive.
Yeah.
The outcome of that probably is multi-fold higher, but people often overlook that. And this seems like a cost, whereas it should be seen as an investment.
Yeah, there's so many things to unpack in that, like why that is, because there's a lot of perceived signaling value with that piece of paper at the end, which is like I'm hanging on to some certainty in the midst of uncertainty. I'm hanging on to that piece of paper because that's the only guaranteed thing I actually get. It's like if you go into like a scenario where it's like you're facing a $200K decision or like $300K decision, however much it is. And if you put your money in, the only guarantee you get is you get that piece of paper. Like even the skills, it's on you to like make the most of that 2 years. The network, it's on you to interact with people, right? So, but then it's like the risk tolerance is completely skewed, right? Because that sounds super risky, actually. The only guaranteed thing is you torch 200K. That's the only guaranteed thing. And the output of that is you get a piece of paper. That hopefully has signaling value, but I think it's like less and less because everyone has that piece of paper, and at least the good hiring managers I know don't look at degrees. They just throw a problem at you. It's like, okay, tell me how you solve it. Walk me through your decisions, and then, okay, do I like you? It's like, do we get along? And that's it. That's how I've hired over 100 people. I don't run any. I like 5 minutes. Tell me about yourself, and it's I get the gist of the chronology. I was like, okay, this is a problem here. Like, let's just work on that together for 45 minutes. I'm actually more impressed the fewer degrees they have, because like no, if you think about it, if like someone walked in to like a director plus job and you look at their like education history and it's like they only have high school, then yeah, this may be controversial, but like I'm actually like more impressed by that person because like you can see like they had to overcome a lot of adversity to get where they are because the signaling value of the resume is clearly not there. So there has to be something else propelling them forward. And that's more likely to be merit and problem solving, which you will go validate with your interview.
You can see a lot of perseverance and grit in them.
Right? Yeah. It's I lived in Nassim Taleb. There's a quote in like Skin in the Game. It's a great book, by the way. He says he trusts a surgeon that doesn't look like the surgeon. Yeah, the surgeon with the perfect fingernails and everything versus the surgeon that looks like someone from the butcher shop. He actually says it's like he trusts the surgeon. It's quite one of my favorite.
I don't know if I'll buy that.
I don't know if I'll buy that, but yeah,
generally
he gets his point across in his very unique way.
Funny enough, I was having a similar conversation with a friend of mine earlier this week, and what we were talking about is, at least in our tech world, as you said, if somebody has arrived where they've arrived without a degree, we have a lot of respect for them. But on the contrary, if you come across somebody who has worked very closely with a doctor for 30 years, and now they say, I can treat you, you probably wouldn't trust them.
Yeah.
You probably still want to go back to somebody who has a medicine degree.
Yeah, it is.
And so this also kind of shifts based on who you are dealing with.
We are and legal profession, which are like the two most known like things where you have to go through a gauntlet, right? And at the end, like you emerge. But I think that's actually okay. And there's a reason why it's like that, because they're fairly deterministic problems that require you to like just like know things of how to get from A to Z. For tech, it's all stochastic and like probability and wild and chaos, right? Yeah, there's no like certification in like crypto.
I think there is.
Right? Yeah,
there's one more thing there. Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
But I think when it comes to legal and medicine, there are human lives involved.
Yes, there's that.
Yeah. When it's tech, it's no human life involved. Like, system broke, so what?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is, some order losses, maybe some money loss here and there. Maybe customer will be frustrated a little bit. But usually there is no human life at stake.
No, I agree. It's just
because of your bad decision, somebody's not going to be thrown in a prison for 100 years. Right?
Well,
I think that's there.
Yeah, it's like, well, tech is like embedded in everything. So it's like, it's like kind of situational depending on and 99% of it. Yeah.
And probably when you are dealing with those mission critical, near real time systems, you probably don't want any average software engineer work coding on those things, right? Cool. All right, Casey, we are coming close to the end. I have last couple of questions. We'll shift gears a little bit, get to know you a little better. So my first question to you on that note is, who are the 3 most influential people in your life?
It's called Dead and Distant Mentors, which comes from one of my favorite people, Derek Sivers. But yeah, unfortunately, he's not in the top 4. He's probably in the top 10. So my top 4, which heavily inspires the philosophy of expanded skills, or I'll go with like from order of timeline, right? Chronology. So Aristotle is number 1. Then if you want like more modern, on the other end of the spectrum, Charlie Munger. And then in the middle, there's Richard Feynman and Leonardo da Vinci.
Like one sentence about everybody, like why? Like why Aristotle?
Well, they're just polymaths. They go against the grain of like trying to fit into the model of the Industrial Revolution where you have to be super specialized. I think especially Da Vinci. You take the other 3, they're known for like a primary domain, right? Aristotle's known for philosophy. Feynman's known for physics. And Munger's known for investing. It's really hard to say like what Da Vinci's known for, but he's like absolutely dominated multiple domains. You might know him for art, but you might know him for military strategy. You might know him for engineering. So yeah, it's definitely like a Da Vinci model, I'd say. It is like what I aspire to be, like a modern day Da Vinci. Big aspirations.
Oh,
yeah. But those are my 4.
Good luck with that aspiration.
Yeah. But unfortunately, they're awesome. Dead and distant mentors.
My second question to you on this note is, if money, time, and resources were not a constraint, what would you do with your life?
Probably something actually similar to expanded skills. but I'd remove some of the business aspects of it. So things like I toss out a CRM, just like I remove some of the stuff that are like operationally burdensome, right? I wouldn't like think a lot about like landing pages. I wouldn't think a lot about like that kind of stuff, right? Like, am I getting like business? It's largely similar. I'm like an intellectual at heart. So I actually like value skill acquisition and just being like well-rounded, like a modern day Da Vinci, right? And like helping others like achieve the same goal. So it's actually like expanded skills is really like an intellectual pursuit for me that I'm running as a business. I'd probably can some of my side bets because you lose some sleep over them. It's simplify things.
It happens.
Yeah. But I don't see myself as like sitting on a beach or whatever, but I probably like embark upon some time like teaching at a community college for no pay, because I actually feel like it's a very underserved part and you can actually make a colossal impact. And there's no like top level practitioner that I know will willingly just go into a community college and just teach people like business skills 101. Yeah, so that's what I would do.
Cool. All right. To wrap the whole thing up, what is that one final advice that you want to leave with our audience?
The one-liner is go make things happen. Don't let things happen to you.
Where can our audience find you?
Yeah, if you want to check out Expanded Skills, expandedskills.com. I'm active on LinkedIn, Twitter, but the best place to follow what I'm doing in every walk of my life is my newsletter on Substack. So caseydai.substack.com. Outlines like everything I'm doing, expanded skills, and otherwise like the other business I'm running with my wife, some angel investments, what I'm doing to like educate my kids, everything. So it's like really personal brand driven. So find like all sorts of interesting stuff there.
And for our audience, I will link out all these, all the places where you can find our awesome guest in the description below. So go subscribe to Casey's newsletter, follow him on Twitter and LinkedIn. And thank you, Casey, for coming on this show and sharing your valuable insights. It's just a important and a very profound topic. A lot of people, as we know today, are dealing with this. I hope they got some value out of it today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jay. I hope the audience can have a few nuggets to take away, and hopefully I didn't ruffle too many feathers along the way.
Thank you. And to our audience, if you are new to this show, consider subscribing to our channel. I know if you like what we present here, please like this episode so we can bring a lot more guests like this and share more valuable information. Thank you.